Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode number 277 for Monday, February 13th, 2023. That's right. We're a day late this week. Some busy schedule things happened on Sunday, so we decided to hold off and still do other podcasts this week on Monday. Hopefully, everybody had a good weekend. And with me tonight, I have Mr. DBQ Hams. DB, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It was nice to, I'm glad that it worked out to be able to podcast and record tonight. So I know we had some conflicts with, let's just say, some sporting events going on yesterday on a Sunday of all days. But no, I think it is good to be here. Good to have all three of us here and a chance to talk about a variety of things, it looks like, from the agenda. So
it's got a good smattering of games here to start off with. But before that, we also have one Mr. Game Logic. Game, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing okay. We're here to talk about games, so can't be that bad tonight.
All right. Let's actually keep you on the mic because you're up first on our main stories here. Looks like you're playing Marvel's Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's kind of the last vestiges of an era, so to speak. So, I fell in love with really Miles Morales last year, and I really fell in love with Miles Morales like the first time I played through a little bit of it on the PlayStation 5, but went for the PC versions last year. And there was a lot of conventional wisdom out there that said, Miles Morales was the better of the two games, and if you played that, then you didn't really need to play Spider-Man Remastered. But I decided, in the turn on the corner this year, that I wanted to kind of double dip, and I was pleasantly surprised. I think, for various reasons, there are a lot of times that I'm playing through story-driven games, and I'm not paying a certain amount of attention, right? Either because maybe I'm live streaming it, or maybe there's something else going on, or quite frankly, lots of times when I go to play at night, after 9 p.m., I'm exhausted, and so there are certain things that I miss. And one of the things that I did miss is just there are more moves that are akin to the Miles Morales moves. I prefer Miles' power set. That feels more fun to play in execution, but Parker has probably a lot more available that I didn't pay attention to the first time around, or maybe just because I'm playing. I'm playing it on. I was playing it on this PC actually, so I have it in the widescreen format, in the ultra widescreen format. It's a really amazing immersive experience. I was playing around a lot more with the photo mode and with some of the kind of the NVIDIA shadow play, some of the kind of cinematic presentations of it. So, I just became consciously aware of kind of more moves, and it feels like tools that the Peter Parker character has at his disposal than I did maybe the first time around when I played some of it on PlayStation 5. So, I've been having a really great time with it. There were some bad actors out there who were saying when this game originally came out that it was not performant on PC. I'm not sure if there were problems at the outset. I don't believe so. I think those were people who, I think those were people who had gaming PCs who maybe don't fully understand PC gaming technology, and so they didn't really know how to set it up. But I had everything turned on, playing it at 1340 by 1440p resolution on a 3080 Ti, and was getting upwards of 80-90 frames, and up towards the 120 frame point at various points in various scenes. So HDR I've become less enamored with over time, but it really makes like the colors pop on this scene. And again, playing it in that widescreen format is just pretty amazing, as Spider-Man is.
It's sensational.
I see what you did there. Yeah, it's kind of spectacular that you were able to pull that off.
Yeah. So you're playing keyboard and mouse, I'm assuming?
No, and so that's really good. As I went to unmask my mic, I almost hit the stream and record buttons. So that would be bad. No, actually, so God of War Ragnarok is one of the PlayStation Studios games that I do play on PC using mouse and keyboard. But in general, third-person action-adventure games on console, on PC that are console ports, I generally try and play, and generally just the PlayStation games, for whatever reason, I wind up preferring to play with controller. So I am playing controller. It's actually, I feel quite magnanimous to be playing a PlayStation game on PC using Xbox controllers. So there you go. But I do, I have on occasion played those games with the DualShock as well, because those drivers are now available for games on Steam. Now, I want to say, I think my Spider-Man games are split. I think I have Miles Morales through the Epic Store, and then I have Spider-Man through Steam. So as far as I know, those drivers aren't enabled on Epic Store games because it's actually a Valve implementation to integrate those drivers. But I am playing with controller. Spider-Man is just the fluidity of his movement is just such that it really plays more like a third-person action-adventure game, whereas God of War Ragnarok, in some ways, just talking about the spectrum of movement, right, in terms of kinematics, is a little more towards the shooter end of the spectrum. It's not a shooter, it's just more towards that end of the spectrum in terms of how you play the game, right? You're constantly, at least I'm constantly throwing the axe, and even though, yes, Parker is constantly firing his webs, his melee to me is much more involved than Kratos's is, and that just makes it more comfortable for me to play with a controller.
Yeah, I would assume Spider-Man 2 moves a lot. It moves a lot quicker than God of War. I haven't played God of War yet, so.
Yeah, God of War, I mean, comparing those two games, it's very much, I mean, you guys have heard for years me talk about the spectrum of kinematics in shooters, and I talk about Destiny 2 being in the middle, Halo being on the left, and Call of Duty being on the right, just in terms of, just how much acetaminophen you feel hopped up on when you're playing those games versus Halo. You feel like you've just taken Sudafed, and then Call of Duty, you feel like you've taken the acetaminophen, and that's kind of what Spider-Man is like. You've taken acetaminophen, right? When you're playing Kratos, you're on some pretty strong Sudafed, maybe a little NyQuil. Not saying that God of War is not exciting. It's super exciting to play. It's super awesome. It's just, obviously, you're playing a big, burly dude, right? Versus playing a human spider.
There's a different amount of weight to those movements, where there's a fluidity that comes with being a Spider-Man.
Yeah, I was just wondering because there's those type of games too. Like when I was playing Horizon on the PC. Initially, I was on keyboard and mouse, but then I was like, I can't. Like, there's something about the third person perspective that I have to use like a controller for. So I switched it. And the game I'm talking about here soon, after DB talks about his game, I'm doing keyboard and mouse right now, but I might have to switch over to the controller also. So just a weird thing like that happens. All right, DB. If you have any questions about Spider-Man, otherwise, if you want to jump into your Steam Next Fest games that you played.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to talk about Spider-Man. That's an easy get there. But yes, this is, so every time that there's a Steam Next Fest, I find myself diving in, downloading probably a half dozen to a dozen different games and playing through them. Oftentimes here, I've talked about a variety of them. This time I feel like I did not wing the jackpot. I downloaded a bunch and bounced off many of them. The physics felt a little bit off. Maybe it's just what but I got two that I want to call out, and they can be reduced down, but I'm calling them out because there feels like there's a little more to each of them than just the elevator pitch. So Gravity Circuit is a small indie team domesticated ant games. It is here's the crossover pitch. It is Mega Man as a roguelike. You are an 8-bit, in the very much that kind of NES style, and you're a little mech, a Gundam, almost not a Gundam, but like a little, yeah, you're a little mech, let's say. Yeah, and you have multiple stages that you can go to, similar to Mega Man, but it'll play out like a roguelike. And it is fun in an 8-bit kind of platforming way. I think the mashup of those two makes a kind of fun combination of how you're going to tackle your run. So that is Gravity Circuit, which is coming out in March. And then Spiritfall is another small little indie game, another roguelike. Guess what? There were a whole lot of roguelikes to dig through. And sometimes, even when I wasn't looking for a roguelike, it ended up being a roguelike, like a hockey roguelike. How about that? An ice hockey roguelike. But Spiritfall it has the combat of a platform brawler. So it plays out kind of like a Smash Brothers combat in terms of heavy light attacks, upward smashes, and you're on a platform with multiple levels, but it is a roguelike in terms of enemies spawn into the map, and you need to clear them off as you move from node to node. So just like I really enjoyed Chunchi a few years ago, which was kind of a 2D belt scroller, brawler, roguelike, this feels like if you mashed up a roguelike and Super Smash Brothers. So again, kind of fun. Both are coming in the next few months here in spring of 2023, both small little indie teams. So that was Gravity Circuit and Spiritfall.
Looking at Gravity Circuit, it doesn't have any developers that did any of the Mega Man games, does it? Because it really does look like it's ripped from like an NES Mega Man game.
Yeah, it really does. No, it does. It does not. It's a small little indie team. It doesn't seem to, as I was digging around on it, it doesn't seem like Domesticated Ant Games is claiming any type of lineage back to. I think it is, definitely an inspiration of a product rather than a continuation of something.
Yeah. Okay. I just wondering because I was looking at it. Wow. So I like it. Game Logic, any questions or comments on either of these games?
Nope, not right now. Nope.
Okay. All right, let's jump into my game here. So I've been playing Hogwarts Legacy, and I actually just downloaded and installed it on my PC on Saturday, so just a couple days ago. But I've played a few hours so far in it. Pretty much still at the beginning, still like kind of the tutorial kind of levels. I've just now, literally, actually before the podcast, I got out of the school, so I was kind of wandering the grounds, and I had to go to one of the towns to pick up some stuff. So I was able to see what I hopefully will be able to kind of traverse and look around a little bit more. Hopefully later on of the world outside the school, in between the school and this town, which I think are the only two major areas, at least for right now, that they've shown or that I've seen. But then there's that kind of a big open world, there's forests and grasslands and stuff like that in between this area and in between the two areas. So I'm hoping I can get to explore that by myself. I had a companion with me, and she was taking me to the town, and I couldn't really stray off away from her too much. Otherwise, you get like a countdown saying, "Hey, you've left, this character. You got to get back to her before the countdown, drops to 0." I don't know what happens at that point. I'm assuming you just warp back to her, maybe. I don't know, or if you have to like restart that section of the game. But it does kind of scream at you, say, "Hey, you got to go back to her." So you can't really look around too much. You can kind of go away from her a little bit, but it's not really all that much. But other than that, so third person, not Harry Potter, but Harry Potter world. So you're in Hogwarts, you're enrolled in the school as a new student, so you get to create your own character at the beginning. Decent character customization, not too detailed, not like a Skyrim or anything like that, but you get a few choices here and there of what you want, the face and eyes, nose, mouth, kind of that basic stuff. But you can't there's a whole bunch of sliders for eye width and nose length and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't get that granular in there. So, but so then you kind of just start off at school and you kind of just, like I said, you kind of go through and you get to know the school and the teachers and some of the students and stuff. You do the whole hat thing where it picks your uh, not class, but
Your house.
house. Yes, thank you. I'm not not well versed in the Harry Potter lore, so sometimes some of these terms escape me. But so you get to do all that, kind of like we've seen in the movies and stuff like that. But this takes place, I believe, it's 100 years, at least 100 years for Harry Potter, and even I think Fantastic Beasts, that series too. So you're well before any of those characters in there. Maybe Dumbledore might be in there. I think people have said, or if he is, he's like super young. But you have, I guess, some of the characters from the movie, at least one that I've seen. I don't want to spoil it yet, so I don't want to say anything. But there is one person I saw in there that was in one of the movies. So, but you have obviously the school itself is unchanged, just for as far as I can tell from the movies. Until back in hundreds of years later. So, but it's a third person RPG action game. You kind of use your wand as kind of your main weapon. You can just kind of do like a blast with it. And then now I'm starting to get different spells I can do, like levitation, almost like kind of like force powers. I can kind of compare it to like Star Wars. Yeah, kind of like a force push and pull. Yeah, I can fix things, which is a little bit weird, which I've only had to do once when I first learned that spell. So I don't know how that'll kind of play into things later on. Might be kind of interesting. But and then there's like a whole other, like I went into the which I didn't realize there's a whole like sub menu where you can go and there's like, I don't know, dozens of spells in there, so you can kind of swap them in and out. I'm assuming for different situations. And I was reading actually today where like some of the enemies kind of have weaknesses to different spells, so I'm assuming that kind of plays into it too. So almost like a kind of Destiny, like the weapons and with different weapons. Um, uh,
Yeah,
affect
like an
enemies different.
elemental effect. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm really enjoying it. Like I said, I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, but I kind of just like, I'm a big open world guy. Like I'll play open world. I always play open world games, and a big Magic guy. I've always kind of liked Magic and just movies and TV shows and stuff like that in games too. So it's kind of scratches that itch where it's. I have to say I was a little bit disappointed with Lord of the Rings, at least with the movies and stuff, as far as how Magic was played in there, because it was a little muted, I thought, for the most part. And here is like, it's like full on magic that you're using spells, and you can do like craft potions and stuff like that. And there's other things you can do. Um, I think there's one thing called spellcraft, which I just got to, so I'm not really sure how that's going to work yet. But I think I don't know if that's more of like kind of like buffs and stuff that you can do with your spells, but I have to dig into that. But I'm enjoying it right now. It's a very pretty game. I guess I don't play on PC. I mean, I only have, I should say only, but I have 3070, RTX 3070. And I can't do ultra on everything, but I can put some things up to ultra. So I mean, but even everything on high looks really nice. So I've taken some really nice photos and stuff too. There's no photo mode itself, but I can do it through the Xbox game bar or the Windows game bar. You can take photos and videos that way too. So it's a really pretty game. But yeah, I'm going to continue. So this game kind of came about too because I was kind of in this in between state after I finished Pokemon, which after I finish a game, I kind of just wander around video games for a while, and I'll talk about a couple of other games later on. And I kind of bounced around between that, and then I was kind of looking for just single player games. So this is definitely scratching that itch, and I'll definitely keep going in this game. So, any questions or comments for the game?
How does the spellcasting work? Is it just mapping to buttons? Is there like a stick movement for selecting? Is it a radial menu? After playing Forspoken, where it really was just kind of a radial menu, I'm curious on how nuanced this is, or how much it just becomes the equivalent of swapping out different weapons.
Yeah, that's pretty much that for right now. It's just like I said, you can just keybind the different spells. I think you can only have 4 at a time right now, at least for right now, that I can do. But when you go to first learn the spell, you do kind of have to do this like kind of weird. They'll have like a some kind of emblem or something on the screen, and you kind of have to follow it with your mouse. And then what you kind of do is every little bit, like let's say every like inch or two within that little emblem, there's a button press you have to do. So it's like space bar, or F, F key, R key, or something like that. When you do that, as you're going, it kind of like gives you a speed boost. And behind you, there's like almost, I don't know if they really even explain what that is, but there's like a kind of like a black reddish trail that's following you. So if that catches up to you, then you kind of fail that spell. You have to redo it again. I've only seen that with the initial when you're just trying to learn it. I haven't seen it anywhere else. But like I said, there's that spellcraft thing, which I'm not sure how that's going to work exactly. So maybe that kind of plays into it later on if there's more than just like a keybind thing. So we'll see how that works out. Okay. Game Logic, any questions or comments?
Yeah. So is this the only Harry Potter game that you've played? So there have been a few that have come out before. I was just wondering if you'd had any.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever played any of the other ones that have come out. Not even like the Lego ones that I haven't tried before.
Okay, because that was what I was going to ask about. And then there was apparently an actual Chamber of Secrets game that came out in 2002 on PC and PlayStation. And I think, well, you said you had been PlayStation before, right? So did you touch any of those at all?
No, yeah. I have never, as far as I can remember, I've never played any other Harry Potter games.
Okay. All right, gotcha.
Yep. All right. Let's jump into the news. There's no other comments. And first up, DB, we have the Nintendo Direct. That actually was a few days ago, right for the weekend.
Yeah, what was that?
Thursday?
Yeah, Thursday was the Nintendo Direct. Lots of games. Definitely a few surprises here and there. Lots of further information about things that we already knew were coming. I'll be curious on any thoughts that you gentlemen have. It felt it was about 40 minutes or so. Covered a lot of games, but to me, it felt like a little bit for everybody, right? Like, I don't know that there was a lot there if you were looking for a certain type of game, but there was we did not get 6 versions of a farming simulator, but it did seem like there was a little sampling of everything. I think 2 of my takeaways here is that we did get some releases or hard dates on things that Nintendo's been sitting on for a little while. That we knew Advance Wars Reboot Camp was delayed after the Russia invasion of Ukraine last year, and they had not put a date on that. And now that is coming in April. We've known that Pikmin 4 was kind of out there in some capacity, and Miyamoto said years ago that it was close to being done. And then there was also the rumor of a Metroid Prime remaster that Nintendo had in the can and kind of waiting, and that shadow dropped on the Nintendo Direct. So that came out digitally. It is almost a remake from all indications from reading about it and viewing videos online. Like, most of the art assets have been rebuilt. It's not simply an up-res of the original art assets, but it is not necessarily a full-on remake in terms of changing anything in terms of puzzles, enemy combatants, AI aspects, things there. So those are some of that was kind of the surprise announcement here, along with a second surprise, which was the GBA and Game Boy titles on Nintendo Switch Online. So Nintendo Switch Online now has a small handful of Game Boy and Game Boy Color, and I say that in very timid language because while there is the potential to release a whole lot, Nintendo did not commit to any type of schedule. And then if you are on the expansion pass, it also has GBA games as well. So I think there's 6 or 7 that released 6 GBA games. I think 7 Game Boy Color Game Boy games. And they kind of hinted at and showed a couple covers of some of the upcoming Game Boy Advance games as well. So those were kind of the shadow drop aspects of the surprise from the Direct. Tao, did you see anything there that was a surprise to you, or anything that stood out?
Well, the GBA stuff was, and the GBA, the Game Boy stuff was kind of a surprise. I mean, I know there's always been rumors about it, but that's been going on for years, so you never knew when it actually would actually drop, if it would actually drop. So that was kind of cool, and it was that same day. Same thing with the remaster of Metroid Prime. I kind of figured that would be coming at some point this year, but I didn't realize when they announced it would be available that day, or I think within that next day. I think Friday it might have been even released. So it was interesting. The only other couple of the games that kind of just piqued my interest, because a lot of it, yeah, like I said, they had a little bit of everything. So I don't know. I kind of felt like maybe it was too much a little bit, just because there was just so much in there, and just stuff that I guess just as a whole, this kind of wasn't really a direct for me. Like, I didn't really see anything that kind of blew my mind or anything like that. And even the two games I'm going to talk about are just, the one is Fantasy Life: The Girl Who Steals Time, which is kind of like a city builder crafting kind of a game, and I always like those kind of games, so that kind of piqued my interest. And kind of
Did you play the original one on 3DS?
I did. No.
Okay.
Did you play it?
Well, I've tried it. Yeah. I mean, it's yeah. I can see where it is in your vein of crafting and that aspect.
Yeah, so it looks pretty cool. And then the other one was kind of a surprise. Like, of all the games that Sega, could have bring back and bring out, Samba de Amigo, Party Central. It's kind of this one was the old. I think there was like a peripheral, wasn't there? Like the bongos or maracas. I think it was actually.
Yeah, it came with maracas on the Dreamcast, and then on the Wii when it was ported by Gearbox, that it was it had a attached controller to the Wii remote.
Yeah, an accessory. So yeah, that was kind of a interesting. I never played the original either version of it, but this one like kind of seems like a cool party game. Me and my wife or kids, or all four of us, or three of us, excuse me, would be able to play. So that's just looks kind of cool. So yeah, those are the only two that kind of just jumped out at me. The Dead Cells Return to Castlevania, that was kind of cool too.
That was announced at the Game Awards back in December, but we got a date of March and a price tag of $10. Yep.
So that looked pretty interesting. So I've never played Dead Cells, so maybe try that out. I don't know if you need the base game or not.
You do need the base game, but you can usually find it on sale, or if you have Game Pass, it's part of Game Pass.
Yeah. And then the DLC for Splatoon and Fire Emblem, and what's the other game? Just forget the game's name.
Xenoblade Chronicles.
Xenoblade, yeah.
Yes. Yep.
And then of course they capped it off with Zelda. So I mean and it looks beautiful. That you say what you want about some of the titles on the Switch, but I mean Nintendo can really like just squeeze every last bit of juice out of their systems, when it comes to their games. So I mean, it looks really pretty. So we'll have to see. And they showed a lot of different like vehicles they can use in the game, so that's kind of interesting. And I'm assuming this is still, I don't know if they've ever officially said, but like back in the past, before obviously Link went to sleep or whatever happened to him.
They haven't said anything in terms of what the indications are.
Yeah, what the timeline is, or if even this is just like a different game. So, let's see.
One of the things there that I found interesting is that the file size is about 17 gigs for Tears of the Kingdom, where I think the original was 6 to 8 in terms of. So it's significant in terms of whether that's significant in terms of the size of the world or just the assets that are in it.
Yeah, maybe just more quality stuff than trying to throw a whole open world in there, or a bigger open world, I should say. Game Logic, anything on here that you piqued your interest, or not sure if you got to either flip through any of the websites or check it out itself?
I mean, no comments from you guys on Tron Identity coming to the Nintendo Switch?
I think, I guess we knew that was a game, right? It's a Thomas Bithell game of John Wick Hex, and Thomas was alone. So I knew that it was coming as a game. I guess I didn't pay attention what systems it was going to be, what consoles it was going to be released for. But yeah, I think by the nature of who the designer is and that history, I'd be interested in what that is.
And then we have another game from Don't Nod coming, Harmony: The Fall of Reverie, which, I mean, Don't Nod does good stuff. Putting those things on Nintendo Switch is a nice get, because it's a system that can handle it, I think, without too much difficulty about the technology and graphical fidelity curve, being constantly advanced by the industry, so that's a good thing. The Game Boy and Game Boy Advance stuff. So we've talked in recent weeks about how there's lots of complaining from the gaming community, and lots of discussion about game preservation, and lots of things about, companies not giving you access to stuff. And we mentioned that, people make those complaints on Xbox and PlayStation, and yet here is Nintendo, which has been going along for 20-something years, who pops up a brand new eShop every time they put out a new piece of hardware, and then when they subjugate that hardware to, second place on the roster, third place on the roster, and eventually get rid of it, there's zero way for you to access those games. Those games do not roll forward with you to the next piece of hardware. So here we are at what I constantly say has to be getting to be near the end of the Nintendo Switch's life cycle, and yet there's new content popping up on the store. Like, do we think that this Game Boy Advance stuff is a get for people who have bought Nintendo Switches on the back half of the life cycle and are going to stay on it when the new thing comes out? Or are we sitting here looking at an indication that maybe the Switch isn't going to go away as quickly as some past generations of consoles, that maybe it's going to continue to ride along as like a second place SKU, or maybe, like I keep saying, Microsoft should just take the Xbox Series X and say that tower is a new PC case spec, and just say, now just give me a bunch of parts every 2 years that go inside the same case. Is Nintendo's intention, because we've talked about how the Switch is a product problem for them, right? It's so popular now that, like, you're hard pressed to do what they've done before and just make it go away. Are we seeing a case where they're just gonna, the Switch is just gonna become their ride or die, and we're just gonna see Switch 2, Switch 3, Switch 4 that are all that same form factor and functionality?
That's a big question, right? I think the smaller question to there is the whole Nintendo Online kind of virtual console aspects of things. I think it is a way of adding value to the system. I think it's a way of stretching content as well, when they don't have, they have some games coming out every month, right? I think if you look at the calendar release, it gives you a steady beat without necessarily kind of overwhelming, because there's not huge amounts of third-party games coming in the same capacity because of the technical specs. So I think that having those virtual console aspects of the Nintendo Online service, it does add to that. I think it's also a way to tie in some franchises and bring back some IP in the wake of we get Minish Cap on there. Like, if you're gonna Zelda Link's Awakening, you're kind of giving people some IP teases as you head into another release. And I think that is something that they can do kind of throughout the year as they get ready for things. In terms of the Switch itself, I don't even know where to start on that one, because I think the form factor will not go away with the next generation. I think that the next generation becomes a little more performance based, and it allows people, because of the fact that it's now the third best selling system ever as of last week, when it passed PlayStation 1 or original Game Boy. It was, I say that with some hesitation, because I think we're down to just PlayStation 2 and DS that it is not surpassed yet. So yes, I think like they have enough units out there in the channel that they would want to keep some type of backward compatibility and upscaling onto the next one.
Yeah, and I guess you can kind of go back and look at like their past systems too, like where you kind of see where they're winding down, and they would still kind of throw things out there where you would think like, whoa, why are they putting this out? Like the original, I don't know if it was the original, but one of the Xenoblades, I remember it came out late on the Wii system. And obviously, Xenoblade is not a huge, at least at the time, wasn't a huge like series or anything. But it was for the time that game was, it was a beautiful game from the Wii itself. And they've just done that with like obviously with Zelda's. They've kind of crossed um, systems with Zelda a couple times, I think now. But they always throw those kind of bigger thing with the bigger games, kind of just the bigger things like kind of near the end of the system. So maybe this is just them doing that once again. Like, hey, here's a bunch of stuff before we announce, the next big thing possibly. I mean, who knows? With Nintendo, you can't really predict what they're going to do because I mean, obviously, like PlayStation and Microsoft thing, you can always kind of see where they're kind of going. Nintendo was kind of that wild card, even to themselves, where it's just you never know what's going to happen. But and then the other thing with the direct itself too was this is just the first half of the year, so I think they went up to July as far as releases. I believe I don't think they went past that. So we still have another year, half of the year to see what they'll bring out. Hopefully, there's gonna be some. Obviously, Zelda's the biggest one for this first half of the year, which is coming out April, I believe. Correctly, May 12th.
May, yes.
Yeah, 12th. So, and then just as a system, I mean, I've been thinking about this like probably for the last couple of years. Like, what are they going to do now when they do have? I mean, they're going to have to at some point go to that next system, go to that next iteration. And I don't know. I don't know what if they say, hey, next iteration is just it's just a console. Maybe they try to split off again, which I think would be a mistake. I mean, that's just me talking. I would like to think that they would do, a Switch 2 or Super Switch or whatever you want to call it with their next iteration of hardware. But it's just like I just rack my brain sometimes. It's just like kind of going back and forth and how they're gonna go about it. I don't want to say how they go about the problem because I guess that it's kind of a problem and maybe it's a good problem. Kind of bad, obviously, like you said, it's you got this major, huge success once again. Like, maybe not as big as the Wii, or maybe bigger, but I mean, yeah. And obviously, there's other circumstances that happened a couple of years ago that kind of boosted them too, and I think it's kind of all the consoles. But I mean, it's just going to be a hard sell to say, hey, here's the next hardware, and here it is. So, and how they go about doing that, because obviously, even just like with the virtual stuff, I mean, obviously there are a lot of people, kind of dogging them that they didn't do anything like the virtual console, just like the virtual console. Like they kind of, dripped and drabbed with stuff, obviously with, the Game Boy and N64 stuff and Super Nintendo. But, everybody liked how that virtual console was set up. And even not just with the old Nintendo stuff, but with all the new stuff that came on that system. There's a lot of stuff that's, like I said, now you can't get it anywhere because it's gone. They're not, they're not going to bring it forward. So it's going to be interesting in the future. See what happens.
So, Game Logic, you tossed us a bone there. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I mean, I want to differentiate a little bit. Like, so with Tao, what you were saying, that is the norm, and I am accustomed to that, right? PlayStation 4. In the last out year, right, we got Ghost of Tsushima and The Last of Us Part 2, right? So yes, I'm accustomed to, new games, new content, right, coming on a console right up until the very end for games of that generation. But in this instance, what I'm calling out is I'm saying, given the past history that the Nintendo model, that the online stuff, you're only able to access that, the virtual console-like stuff, you're only able to access that on that piece of hardware. I don't know that we're normally accustomed to seeing big, high-value items. Like, the Game Boy Advance and Game Boy content, that's not small beans. That's, while it's not technologically high, it is of incredible nostalgic value to people who own those consoles and have had no way of really getting back to them. In some cases, those people did the 3DS, because did 3DS play those games?
Yeah, there was a virtual console that had some GB games and Game Boy Color. The GBA games were on the Wii U virtual console, which has been locked even further, right? We're coming up into the final shutdown in May of 2023 of the Wii U and 3DS eShops. So that definitely goes back to your point of it has the potential of locking things away as they transition from one platform to the next.
So as a result, I mean, people have been holding on to their 3DSs, right? I've talked about when I've looked at, looking for a 3DS, like the market on eBay for those is they're asking for prices more than the price of a current gen console, right, on store shelves. That's significant. And so what I'm wondering and what I'm asking is the deployment of that content on the Nintendo Switch seems to telegraph to me that the platform is staying around in a similar vein to Xbox or PlayStation as a platform. I could look at the entire continuity of the Xbox as a singular platform, and that's what it's become. And now those games have stretched that continuity across each of those generations, and that's why, I think you can look at it like that. PlayStation has iterations of brokenness. However, I could still say from PlayStation 3 across PlayStation 4 into PlayStation 5, I can kind of look at that as a platform. There's some continuity of game access across those three platforms in a certain hodgepodge way, not nearly as elegant as the Xbox implementation, but I would say that those three feel more contiguous to me than PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1. Which I feel like are almost standalone on an island, discrete generations in and of themselves. Nintendo has historically had no continuity, right? I would say maybe except, on the desktop size console, maybe except NES and Super NES. But
yeah, I think
was there even anything
has
there?
not been there. No, I think there's, in terms of any type of compatibility, they have had compatibility in a physical media sense, right? Like going from GameCube to Wii to Wii U, you could play those, but and from Game Boy to Game Boy Color to Game Boy Pocket to GBA, DS, even you had the physical media. But in terms of an online presence or a digital purchase, you were locked out time and again.
So it just feels like that. Like I said, that it feels like to me, I now have to strongly question. Right, is this an indication that they're getting into this mode where they've said, hey, the Switch is a thing. It's almost kind of a form factor and product category in and of itself, and are they planning on sticking with it for another couple of generations and just iterating on the hardware? The other thing that's super interesting from a business perspective is we obviously go on and on and on. In fact, I just wrote in a post on my blog earlier this week that really started to question, is AMD really a PC game hardware manufacturer, or do they just make those GPUs to feed their console business? And so, if you've ever paid attention to Formula One, MotoGP, or World Superbike, we talk about homologation. And for instance, what this is about. You take a look at Honda or you take a look at Toyota. There's absolutely no need for those corporations to have a Formula One race team. They don't make luxury cars at the super high end of the spectrum. There's no point in them having NASCAR teams, right? Really. But the reason that companies like that, versus like a McLaren, it makes sense for McLaren to have a Formula One team right in your head, because you go, hey, the McLaren road cars are very close and analogous to the Formula One cars. But the reason they do it is because they deploy new technologies up at the super high end, and then they trickle those technologies down through something called homologation, and then those things eventually wind up on their consumer level production cars. And so I said, the way AMD goes about handling their drivers and other things in the GPU market, it kind of feels like that's just a hobby to them. There's really no practical need for it. It's really all to feed their console business, because the console business is like ginormous in comparison to how much of the market that they own, right, in terms of PC hardware. And so, we go on and on and on about AMD. This is really a great get for NVIDIA. It's its only footprint, right, really, in the console business, and it's going gangbusters, right? It's really kind of surprising. I think maybe because there's not a ton of financial get to it, because NVIDIA probably sells those old portable chips at an extreme discount to Nintendo, which is why Nintendo goes with them. But it's going to be interesting to see, if they are doubling down on the Nintendo Switch as a platform and intending to maintain continuity with it across a generation or two, there may be some additional scratch here for Nvidia to kind of have a foothold in the console market, and that's super interesting to me as well.
Do you think like the smart move for Nintendo would be just to do like I won't say a minor iteration, but just kind of iterate up on the Switch? Say, hey, here's your Switch Pro. It's pretty much the same thing, but it's got the better CPU and maybe a slightly better GPU in it. Without going like full, here's the next console, kind of a deal.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be what would make sense to me. Is like you said, and like I was saying before, what would make sense to me is for there just to be a Nintendo Switch 2, and just for them to slightly tweak the ergonomics on that, and to incrementally step up the hardware, but make it the same form factor. Look at some compatibility across accessories. I mean, there's absolutely no reason that your Nintendo Switch Pro controller couldn't work with that further on SKU. Then you'd have the same type of continuity you have. Like I still use my original Xbox One controllers, right, to play games on PC and to play games on my Xbox Series X. So there's a lot of gets that you could have there as well. The thing they have to do, Nvidia has not done any update on that chipset for anything that they sell in the consumer space. And it's really unclear to me what they've done as far as anything on mobile. They've definitely done some IoT stuff. And in fact, that's a really big business segment for them now. So I don't know what you would have to do to get NVIDIA to build you a new chipset for that, because they seem to have abandoned any aspirations they had for the mobile market. The new Razer Edge, which I think just went on sale today. I got an alert from Verizon saying that there was some deal available for that. The Logitech handheld doesn't run on NVIDIA hardware. So as far as I can tell, they're not actively participating in deploying anything in that space. So that may, for Nintendo to get them to do something about that may, require some more greenbacks, but it would be super interesting.
Yeah, definitely. All right, TB, you also have the next story. One that I know you love to talk about.
I know, but I think I'm just going to hit this real quick. This is, again, Activision Blizzard and the Microsoft merger. We had some provisional findings coming out of the UK's CMA. We had talked about this last fall in terms of it's the regulatory agency out of the UK. They were early out of the gate to provide some provisional findings, basically talking about giving Microsoft some off-ramps into approval, talking about breaking up the Activision Blizzard King company into multiple different pieces, and having some be merged and some stand on their own. It even talked about the cloud gaming aspects. It talked about that there were behavioral provisions that they might find acceptable as well, in terms of providing contracts or guarantees of access, like the 10-year of Call of Duty, which is what is kind of bandied about at this point. So the analysts and the discussions around it feel like it lays it out, but is also a little bit soft, because it gives them, doesn't necessarily say that even if they would do some of the behavioral pieces that it would be approved, but it does give some less harsh findings than potentially predicted. So I think that's where you end up getting some Wedbush analysts. Michael Pachter, have not thought about that name for a while in this industry. But again, some analysts think that it will end up going through over time, that the kind of concerns raised are not to the level that would prevent it, even after some changes and adjustments have been made. So there are, we are in that kind of this is the first of the regulatory agencies to provide some provisional findings. We still have the EU and the America's FTC which has already sued Microsoft in terms of kind of pulling this out of regulatory and into legal matters as well. All that is to say, we don't know a whole lot more, but I think the analysis from the industry is that it opens the door more than it shuts it for the merger.
Nice. Game. Any comments on that?
Whoa, Nelly! Let's put that horse back in the barn there, partner. I think so. Pachter's name should resonate with people as being not credible and not valid. I would take anything that guy says with a mountain of salt.
I think the last time that I felt Pachter was relevant was what, 2012 maybe.
And even that, I think that would be fairly late. I mean, this is an individual who basically got ridden off of the gaming news scene for all of his kind of reach, takes of extreme reach. So the two things I would throw out as cautions in what people take away from this. So first of all, the CMA's provisional findings document is huge. It's 275 pages or longer. And if you really read into the very, very deep details, there's a lot of stuff that's on the surface. Then there's a lot of stuff that's in the middle of the document, which, if you can think about how most people read, which is that they don't, and you in particular think about how Americans read, which is they read the stuff up front. A key way to find out if your students in class ever actually read a book is ask them about something in the middle of the book, because what they did was they read the beginning and then they read the end, figuring that they would get away with showing that as proof of comprehension. So in the middle of that document, there are some very lengthy sections that give off some indications that the CMA is basically unwilling to hear much of anything other than divestiture. There are a lot of indicators in there that point to and indicate that if there were other options that they were going to consider, they would have already considered them, and they would have not indicated some of the off-ramps that they're saying are available. So that's a bit of a cautionary tale. The other thing that came out in this is there are also some sections in there that show that the CMA's assessment is that Microsoft knows very well that Game Pass cannibalizes game sales. And so there is a tilt to their perspective that may indicate that by doing something like buying Activision and COD, which again I go back to as always is one of the top 10 companies that earn 65% of the revenue in the gaming industry, that will expand the reach of that cannibalization of sales, and that will therefore mean that the only people who can really compete over time will be people who adopt the exact same business model as Microsoft. And one of the things that's problematic with that is that could be problematic if your perspective is that their business model, anchored to Game Pass, which is looking to be in eroding effect on game sales, is a loss leader competitive strategy. And they will look at that knowing full well that other companies who are not at the multi-trillion-dollar scale cannot engage in loss leader strategies. And so, there's some nuggets in there that may indicate some intransigence to, continue to push on this deal in the exact same way that it's structured now, without some extreme changes to the way it's currently framed.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. I think that's a good analysis there in terms of, yes, there are those off-ramps, but there is a little more emphasis on them, right? That this is not an easy road. And I think the other piece there that you mentioned, which is called out in a number of the regulatory agencies, is the cloud, is the emphasis on cloud gaming, that this really does push in and push that market without a whole lot of other competitors in the same sense. Like in some ways, the regulatory agencies are looking at cloud gaming just as much as they're looking at traditional consoles.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people try and skate by that, and I think the difficulty in then wrapping their head around it is they're like, cloud gaming's not that big a deal. Microsoft is there. Oh, yeah, but Microsoft is the number 2 cloud competitor on the planet. What that means is when they absorb Activision, the Call of Duty infrastructure currently sits on a hodgepodge, quilted fabric of primarily AWS, but then there's a lot of legacy stuff that sits on 8, 9, 10 different small cloud providers, right? Like your Akamai's and your people who are just not up in that upper end scale. There's no way in the world that Microsoft is going to own Call of Duty and pay other cloud providers to host those workloads. So all those workloads are going to move to Azure. When it moves to Azure, that wedge of cost, right, that immediately eats into profit, right, for Activision, goes to zero. So that increases the lift that Microsoft gets, but that also increases the leverage that they have to then take that property or multiple properties and peanut butter it around the market at low or no cost, right? Which is, again, a loss leader strategy that other people can engage in. So that context, right, is a thing that has to be taken into account that a lot of people try to not take it into account. And once again, shameless plug, my blog, roundingoffinfinity.com. I also wrote an article about this cannibalization topic and, why it's consistent, right, with, because some people who are against the idea of the merger will see that and say, oh my gosh, that's proof that Microsoft is the evil empire and they're trying to do this and they're trying to do that. No, it's consistent with what they've said. They've said Game Pass we're only looking at that to be 10 to 15% of our revenue, and that could be consistent. There could also be a caveat in there that says, for now, and that caveat doesn't make them liars for saying we only want it to be 10 to 15% of our revenue. It might very well change. They may not have certainty on when that change is going to occur, but they could absolutely intend for that to happen and still be consistent in telling the truth. If it is going to change, if they know that it's cannibalizing sales, what I say, in that post is that then they are absolutely preparing for it. Right? Now witness the power of this fully operational battle station. Right? They're not watching Game Pass cannibalize game sales and not doing anything about it. Right? They're absolutely engineering their business model, their production pipeline for that potential future and what it may mean for competitiveness in the market. So, by all means, please swing by roundingoffinfinity.com and take a look at that article. There's some interesting tidbits in there.
Nice analysis, Game Logic. Thanks, as always.
All right, let's jump into our next. We're going to keep on Activision, actually, for at least one more story. Not the merger, though. So in their latest financial call, they once again reaffirmed that a full annual premium release of Call of Duty will be coming out in 2023. And this was kind of going against reports. This originally was from Bloomberg's Jason Schreier that there was going to be no Call of Duty this year in 2023. They were going to skip this year. And that was supposed to be, I believe, Treyarch's turn, since it was Infinity Ward last time. And then once they did come out with that, and then he came back with another article saying that, yes, they are going to have something, and it's going to be developed by Sledgehammer Games, which I believe Sledgehammer, I believe, was kicked off, or maybe not kicked off, but kind of like, I think Treyarch came in and helped them with, I think a couple of games ago, I believe it was, or 2-3 games ago, right after Treyarch had released Black Ops 3, I believe. Excuse me. But kind of in this article that I got from Inside Gaming, they're kind of still kind of pondering. I guess there was also a possibility that the premium release is just kind of year 2 of Modern Warfare 2, and that they're just going to kind of slap a full retail price and maybe even up at the $70 for that piece of don't know if you want to call it expansion or DLC or whatever, however you want to name it. But so there's still kind of that confusion, I guess, at least in this article. I thought I saw a couple other articles though where it was just straight up, this is our next iteration of Call of Duty, like we've been doing for the last few years. So I just found it kind of interesting, kind of maybe kind of disappointing. Like maybe they were, hopefully we're going to take a year off just to, kind of get things, kind of reorged. I don't even want to say reorged, but just kind of get things, lined up again. Because the last couple have they've been okay, I guess. I actually haven't picked up the last two. I haven't actually picked up any of them since Black Ops 3 or Black Ops Cold War, excuse me. And just because of I kind of fell off the single player route of going Call of Duty because that's what I used to do a lot of times, and then while I was going into the multiplayer, but I don't know. It finally caught up with me where the fatigue kind of hit me, and I just kind of had to back away a little bit. But I was kind of disappointed that if this is true, which kind of seems like it is, that we're gonna get just same old Call of Duty again coming this year. So we'll have to see how that pans out. I'm sure we'll find out for sure in the next few months, either during the E3 period or maybe even before that on what's going on with the series. So. I don't know. Any of you guys have a comment on this?
Yeah, we're absolutely going to get into a fight. I don't think that the last two iterations of Call of Duty have been bad. They've been very commercially successful. And by the last two, I mean Black Ops Cold War and then Modern Warfare 2. Vanguard was definitely bad. And then the other thing I want to put in here is I want to stick my foot in the door to get people to stop listening to Jason Schreier and Bloomberg. So this is 4 times now. Dell, Apple, Nintendo, Sony for PSVR 2, actually 5 times. And then now this 5th time. Bloomberg, as far as its video game coverage, is not a reliable source. It is not worthy of the regard as a publication that it has in the business space, and with regards to even video games as a business, it is not worthy of that regard whatsoever. My pitch is if you were following different publications for the purpose of following the video game business, if it's not reported in the Wall Street Journal and it comes out on Bloomberg, don't pay attention to it. And as far as Schreier goes, I won't get into his investigative journalism, which I have a personal problem with because people seem to be very emotionally attached to that. But I will just say, with regards to just reporting general news, if you don't see corroboration of a Schreier article, don't believe it because it is too often proven to be false, incorrect. They don't recant, and I forget DBQ. There's a specific name for when a news publication redacts an article and corrects it.
Redact something?
Yeah. So, and they don't do that, right? Despite the fact that these companies, which, I mean, in the case of Nintendo and Apple, this is not their normal approach to handling journalism. It's normally just we don't comment on rumors and speculation. But in those cases where they specifically falsely reported things about Apple and Nintendo, which impacted those two corporations' stock prices, they issued very long PR pieces debunking, things that Bloomberg had put out. So, just want to take them off the table, and Schreier specifically as being a reliable source of video game news.
All right, DB, any comments on it?
No, I think at this stage it is too early to say. There are probably multiple paths that this could go depending on what development looks like.
Yeah. It's Sledgehammer's last game was what? Their full release, I think, was WW2, I believe. Right? Yeah. Okay. So
no,
yeah.
Sledgehammer did Vanguard.
Did they do Vanguard? Oh.
Because Treyarch did Cold War.
Well, yeah, I guess that's right.
Sledgehammer did Vanguard, and then Infinity War did Modern Warfare. Yeah. Okay. So I think it jumps ahead, which I think is where the conversation around is this a full release? Is it a smaller spin-off campaign piece that then ties in with season 2 or year 2 type of content?
Well, it jumps ahead in terms of the old rotation, but it's not a jump ahead based on the fact that Treyarch came in and pinched hit for them the year that they should have put out.
Oh, very true. Yes.
Yeah. Well, me personally, I wouldn't mind if they went back to Advanced Warfare because I really did enjoy that game, single player and multiplayer. So I think that might have been their first Call of Duty game. I think Sledgehammer's game. So, but it looks like they've kind of shied away from that, and that was kind of the period where, excuse me, the original Titanfall came out, and they said people were saying that they kind of copied that, but obviously they were working on that before, if not, in tandem as Titanfall. So it kind of had the wall running mechanic and stuff like that, and kind of I think Black Ops 2, maybe 3, kind of went a little bit more with that, but I wouldn't mind if they did that. So, but anyways, let's jump into the next article real quick. This is Apex Legends. The next season is actually bringing Team Deathmatch mode to the game, and interestingly, there will be no new character coming up for this season, which is, I think, Reverie, I believe is what they're calling it right now. So there's no new Apex character. You get Deathmatch, but then I guess they're kind of retooling the other characters, where they're kind of bunching them into classes, like different classes, which I find kind of interesting. Which they kind of already were, I guess, but you never like kind of see that like when you're going to select the character or anything like that. So you get the Assault, Recon, Controller, Skirmisher, and Support classes now. The 6 classes that kind of everybody will be thrown into either one of those. And along with that, they're going to kind of tweak some of the legends that are already on there, giving them different combat perks, and I guess kind of retooling them. They didn't really go too much into detail in this VG247 or 24/7 article, but and this was from last week, so maybe there's some more information now because I believe it comes out tomorrow. Yeah, February 14th, so Valentine's Day. So perfect time, I guess, to start the new season. So definitely gonna jump in here. I usually jump into Apex at least at the start of the season. It's just to kind of see how everything's work out. And I definitely wanted to do this just to kind of see. I want to see like the maps, or if it's just one map, or like how are they doing the maps themselves for the Team Deathmatch. Are they just taking a section of one of the current Battle Royale maps? And I think there's 3 or 4 that they rotate from, like in between. I think they might only go to 2 for each season, and maybe like throw a third one in there midway through the season. But I just want to see if they're going to take a section of that and maybe like put a bunch of buildings or obstacles maybe that weren't there before and kind of put them in there, or how they're going to do that, the map layout, because it's going to be interesting to see how they do that. Game Logic or DB, any interest in the new mode? I know you kind of I think you liked the Control Game Logic that brought you into it, or no? Am I thinking of something else?
I liked
Arena.
I like the Arena mode because, like I said, my big problem with Battle Royales classically from a design perspective is, going back to Tiger Woods, right? 10,000 reps, right? You don't get enough reps of various iterations, various actions in combat, right? And that's all inclusive of number of times you fire your weapon, number of times you slide, avoiding people on the map, yada yada yada. You just don't get enough repetitions of that in any battle royale. And so when a battle royale has solos, that helps, right? Something like Fortnite, because you can just play solos. If you get knocked out, you can immediately cycle back in, right, and keep going. And so Apex Legends was sorely lacking that, and I constantly go on and on about how, you play a 15-minute battle royale match, and it's generally, 10 minutes of looting, and if you're lucky, 5 minutes of combat. Often, very frequently, there's one engagement, and if you're playing with other people, then you just sit there, like in Rainbow Six Siege, right, in idle time, waiting to re-engage. So Arena mode was great. And I actually I should have played it more. But even though I liked Arena mode, like encounters were still radically long in range in comparison to other arena shooters. They were way out, Like literally, you don't see targets in Apex Legends, right? You scope in, and if you're lucky, you see the pip pop up because they're crossing your gun sight, and you're like a velociraptor. You're firing on movement, right? So I'm looking forward to the notion of team deathmatch. There are 3 team deathmatch maps. I don't have any notion just yet of how many of those really get you into CQB tactical situations, or if it's still going to be. But it sounds like they're differentiated from those arena modes, and the lead designer, I forget what his name was talking about it. Their purpose is to hit that exact problem, right? Sheer numbers of engagements per match that people are involved in. They want to get that number up. And then the way in my mind it should work is arena mode. It would be great if a shooter was team deathmatch, 6v6, then arena mode, then battle royale, and you should train in like a team deathmatch, get that high number of repetitions, go on to arena mode, right? Extend the range, right? Increase the complexity of your tactics, and then you can graduate to battle royale. But in this case, they're actually deprecating the arena mode. So yeah, I don't know exactly what my schedule is going to be tomorrow, but just from release date perspective, I would like to be there day one. Of course, the other problem is you have Season 2 of Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2 dropping the day after that. So it could be a very busy week for shooters.
Yeah, definitely. And they are taking out the arena more, unfortunately, at least for now. That's the one thing I kind of don't like about the Battle Royale games, too. And even just with the Battle Royale itself, like they have this limited time modes and they kind of cycle them out. And, something's like super popular, but then they still just take it out. There's a few times that I think Fortnite's kind of kept stuff in, but most of the time they just cycle these things out. And it kind of they've kind of evolved it to something else. But the other games are pretty much, they kind of do the same thing where they just kind of cycle out these limited time modes. Hopefully this one will stick. It'll be interesting to see too, how do you still get powers, or like how is that going to work? Because that could be obviously overpowered if everybody has their powers at all times, or if it's just, 1 or 2 times you can use it, or you have to find it on the map, or how that's going to work out. So that'll be interesting if they have some kind of like kill streaks and score streak things going on too, or how that works out. So we'll have to see. I didn't see that mentioned in this article at all. I didn't get a chance to look at it any further. So, but definitely excited for this. As I was always kind of I was born into the team deathmatch kind of play style. So it'd be interesting to see how this goes. DB, any interest in this? I know we've played it a few times ourselves.
Yeah, it's been a while since it's been a long while since I've checked in with Apex, but I think I'll be very curious to see, because I think Game Logic's point of how much repetition you get, how quickly you're in matches, in what this does to player counts. Like if this brings people back in that have kind of bounced off, that have run their course with have gone on to other things, or it pulls people from other traditional multiplayer shooters to come back and give this a try now that there's a team deathmatch.
So for the sake of time, let's jump into our round robin real quick. I'm going to go real quick, DB, right before you. Just 2 games. Like I said, when I was kind of jumping around between games, I jumped back to the Dreamlight Valley, the Disney Dreamlight Valley, kind of Animal Crossing-esque game. I was playing on the Xbox Series X, actually, and my Xbox One X, I believe, too. I was kind of bounced around between those. Just jumped back in. I'd been playing it for a while when it first came out, and kind of dropped off, and now kind of came back in, just trying to do my regular chores that I have to do and go through the storyline, which is kind of, like I said before, it's kind of nice. That kind of has a storyline that you can kind of follow and kind of gets you through the game. And then the other game was Crackdown 3, which I played through xCloud on my Xbox One X. And I got to go back and revisit that one again. The controls seemed they seemed way too. I think I have to just dial back just the kind of controls a little bit. These like the control sticks, because it just seemed like I was like just moving the stick a little bit, and I'm like zipping around like a 180 like real quick. So I gotta kind of. It was just way too wild for me. So I want to kind of revisit that, kind of go through there.
Man, I haven't thought of that game in a while. What made you go back to Crackdown 3?
I had it on my pins, so I didn't have it installed, but it's still on there since you can play through xCloud. So I was like, I'm going to kind of jump back into that, because I always like the Crackdown series. So I just want to go back and try it. So it was fun. I mean, what I was able to play, because controller's so wacky. It was fun. I'm just like tossing cars around and tossing guys around, punching guys. 30 feet in the air or whatever. So it's just kind of a fun, kind of like that Just Cause kind of a feeling when you jump into there. So, but yeah, I had fun with that. You want to talk about Gotham Knights, which I'm really interested in because.
Yeah, I will. I will talk about it a little bit here for time, but I'll probably come back to it. So I've been playing Gotham Knights. Finally, had a chance to play it. I completely understand some of the criticisms that were leveled at it early upon release. I think it's easily worth $20 to $30, right? There's a lot of game there. I think it's Anthem. I think that's where I get at. Like, this is a game that has a lot of potential, and it is kind of burdensome. It's burdened down with a series of grindy layers that, and this is not a new take, right? Like, there was new stories out. There were a kind of speculation about that this was a live service game that had kind of its knees cut out from under it during the collapse of the live service model with Marvel's Avengers, Anthem, name another game that has tried this path and failed. There are a number of kind of, you've got crafting, you've got resources to collect, you've got a big open world in an Ubisoft fashion that respawns crimes, that kind of cycles through things. You have some grindy quests to unlock, fast travel. I've unlocked the equivalent of the glider of each character has some type of kind of gliding or movement above and beyond the grapple. And you have to do a series of different tasks and challenge and trainings to unlock those. I've done that with one character so far. All that said, I'm really enjoying my time with it, in the sense of I go in, I pick a character each night. So you're kind of, the loop here is that you're going out on patrols each night, and you can advance the story, but you can also you stumble across crimes, or you have some premeditated crimes that you can take out. If depending on the number of kind of street criminals that you interrogate, you will unlock more clues to get more premeditated crimes for the next night. And some of those are what you need to unlock your kind of your gliders and your other traversal mechanics. That's actually really, in some ways, I care less about the story, and I am just kind of out there role-playing characters that I enjoy, right? Like, I take a different character out each night. I go out. The grapple hook makes sense to me because none of these characters fly. They need to kind of just move through the world in a more grounded sense. So yeah, it's not Batman gliding over entire city, which always, I have my own kind of headcanon problems with that anyways. But right, I think the idea here, the combat is more fluid and faster than what you would expect in an Arkham game. It does have some timing on the button presses. They're all lighter. Nightwing, Robin, Batgirl are all lighter attack people than a bulky, shiny Unreal Engine Batman in the Arkham games. But that said, it certainly is not as fluid as Spider-Man, right? As Insomniac Spider-Man, I think that this is an interesting kind of bookend here for the show of the fluidity of Spider-Man, and the movement within Gotham Knights is enjoyable, but it is not best in its class. It is a game that there's a lot of fun to be had, but there's also a lot of grinding that the game puts in front of you. Again, kind of like Anthem. Like, in the moment, gameplay can be really fun. Progressing through systems doesn't necessarily make it fun. So there's my take on Gotham Knights. Realistically, I will be playing more of this because it's my like before I go to bed game. I'll play a few, break up a few crimes, get some rhythm combat in, and call it a night.
Crack some heads.
And so it sounds like you're playing it a lot like I'm playing Spider-Man, where I'm like, the only reason I play the campaign missions is because, as I mentioned before, they nag you ad infinitum incessantly to get back to the missions. But what I really enjoy is, just like you said, is living that comic book life of a superhero, right? The comic book issue life is not a major crime like every issue. It's a bunch of small stuff and then, the big stuff. And, my primary focus has been getting the costumes, and it sounds like you're like, it's interesting. Sometimes we complain about grinding, but then sometimes there are good grinds. And this is like these games offer a good grind, like a thing that is welcome and enjoyable for the rewards that it provides. And partially maybe biased, right, in our perspective because it's the superhero stuff.
Oh yeah, right. If this was a character if these were characters that I did not care about, yes, right. Like that was why Anthem was easy to bounce off of. That's why other things are easier to bounce off of because you're not invested in those. The fact that I am predisposed to like all four of these characters, and the fact that I can go out and rotate around means that each night has felt a little bit different. Like the grinding it is there, but I'm finding peace with it. Again, I'm glad that I picked it up from my local library to give it a try, and I know that I'll buy it once it goes on a deeper sale. But there's fun to be had for fans of the IP.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. Was if this wasn't like Bat Family, would you still care about this game? Or no, I shouldn't say care about this game. Would you keep playing it as much as you probably will?
No.
Or, right.
No, I mean the combat's fun. I'm enjoying the combat, but if this wasn't the Bat Family, I'd go back and play Spider-Man. I'd go and I think there's other games that do this combat.
Yeah,
I think it is
better.
because of the world that's set, because it's traveling around Gotham, and there's an enjoyment to that.
Yeah, and this is the Batman Origins developer.
Yes,
Did they do Origins?
Yep. Warner Brothers Montreal. Yeah, they did Origins.
And then what are you playing it on?
PlayStation 5. So
PlayStation 5.
It's 30 frames per second. The criticisms about how slow the bike are real, but I'm pretending like I am not speeding from one transit spot to another. I am out on patrol. So if I'm going a little slow, it allows me to ping the map to look for crimes.
Thanks.
So yes, I'm justifying the limitations of this game, but I'm surprised at how much I'm enjoying it as somebody who has not enjoyed an Arkham game. Well, has bounced off the Arkham games except for Arkham Asylum.
Great. Nice. All right, Game Logic, you want to bring us out? We got a little bit of tech here that we have. I don't think we've talked about any tech recently, or at least like peripherals. Talking about PCs and stuff, but
yeah, I'll probably be bringing back like a little mini tech segment here and there because I'm probably playing fewer games. I'm just playing Halo Infinite, Call of Duty. I'm going to jump on Apex Legends. I'm probably going to be getting around a lot less, just because I'm kind of admitting where I'm happy right now, and I don't want to keep coming back every single week reporting on those games, except when there's a new season or a new mode or something to really talk about. So, but as part of that, part of the reason I'm doing that is because I'm spending so much time building and tweaking PCs. I want to get back a little bit to maybe every once in a while talking about tech. And so I did want to bring up, the HyperX PulseFire Haste, which is a mouse that has been out for a while. But as we know, I run multiple gaming stations in the studio because I'm constantly experimenting with hardware. The de facto mouse in the studio for the last few years across 2 generations has been the Razer Death Adder, which was just a long-running and venerable mouse, and then I wound up getting rid of the ones that I had through doing hardware reviews and whatnot, but then they came out with the Razer Death Adder V2, and so I got Death Adders again. As of late, Razer software has become so horrific, and software on PCs for keyboards and mouse have become so, when they come with software, that becomes a very important thing. almost more important than the hardware itself. I have actually recently moved to keyboards and mice that don't use software. So all of my stations are fitted out with these 75% keyboards, which I've found. I've experimented with 60, 65%, 80%, 10 keyless keyboards. I've settled down that 75 is the right size for me. Too small, there are keys that are missing. Too big, it takes up too much room and interferes with how widely I need to move the mouse around. But what I've settled on for the mouse of the new generation are these PulseFire Haste. There's a black one, there's a black and red one, there's actually a Tim the Tatman one that's like black and gold that I have, and then there's this one. There's actually a Naruto one that is orange. I have that at one other workstation. There's an Itachi one, which is red. I wanted to get that one, but I didn't this particular time. I just didn't have time to wait for it to ship directly from HyperX. HyperX, just a reminder, because I frequently forget this, is a brand underneath Kingston. Kingston is a brand actually underneath Hewlett-Packard, which I had forgotten that they were the ones who bought them, because we see this mass consolidation around the industry of, the big box PC makers buying up, lots of the PC peripheral manufacturers. So great mouse, honeycomb design, lightweight. I typically in the past haven't liked these lightweight mice because I'm a big guy with big hands. So like the small, daintier stuff tends to not work well for me, but in this case, this is one that really works well. Comes with little rubber pads that you can put on, which help with grip, and so I like that. I usually use aftermarket pads to do that to my mice, but the HyperX ones come with them. So just a note of recommendation for a good gaming mouse and gaming mouse brand if you're in the market.
And it's a wired mouse, obviously, right?
That it is. I do not do wireless mouse. I don't have a problem with wireless mouse latency. I think that's a big myth that goes on now that people have held on to. I think there are wireless gaming mice that are extremely performant and that I would trust in multiplayer PvP. The problem I have with wireless mouse latency with wireless mice is reliability. There's just too many instances where they drop. Managing batteries just becomes like a big headache. They constantly go out when you're not expecting them to. So I just rather not be bothered with it and just use wired.
Yeah, I got an old Logitech. It's been it's a while since I had this. It's been like over 10 years that I've been using this mouse, and it still works. So I've been, hey, it's good. I've been looking at mice. I know my one friend has a mouse that has like a billion buttons on the side of it, and depending on the game, that might be kind of good, but I don't. I every time I look those up, it's like my mouse is fine. So I don't want to do that.
I personally don't think they're good for shooters. One of the reasons why I've gone back to this mouse, and I had this mouse maybe a couple of years ago, and it's just recently that I've decided this is just the mouse that I'm going to use, and I'm going to use it everywhere, is because I've had a couple mice that had 3 buttons or 4 buttons on the side, and same thing, I got those, and I was like, oh, this will be particularly useful. First-person shooters are so much based on intuition and what you're accustomed to. That's why we have a lot of these things. A lot of the, you should game on a 25-inch monitor at 1080p with 240 or 360 hertz. I don't think that's real. I think that's because we have a lot of people who are PvP shooter fans who got started on monitors at that size because when they were younger, that was all they could afford. I think monitors are great. So people play on what they get used to, and there's some validity to that, right? I'm just not going to retrain myself to use a mouse with 3 buttons or 4 buttons on the side. And if I have a tendency to hit those buttons instead of my normal 2 that I usually map grenades and my melee to, then that's just bad. So that's one of the reasons why I've gone back to this mouse, because it's the best mouse that I've found in use that sticks to the old 2 buttons on the side design.
Cool. Yeah, it'd be nice to see future tech-related reviews from you coming up. So like you said, it's been a while since we've had a lot of tech reviews. All right, DB, any or Game Logic, any other last-minute things you want to talk about? No. All right. So that is it for episode number 277. Please join us next week. When Game Logic will be the host, and I believe both of us should be here next week also, myself and DB. Thank you, Game Logic. Thank you, DBQ Hams. again, great show. I think we might have talked about the new stuff a lot more than I thought. I actually thought we were, especially the Nintendo stuff. That's all right. That's sometimes that happens, and we didn't have a lot of gaming stuff this week, anyways. So hopefully, I'll have a lot more on Hogwarts next week, so that I can talk about as I get past the tutorial screens. So for Game Logic, for DBQ Hams, thank you. I am Towmaster99. Please join us next week. We should be back on Sunday at our regular day and time. So join us then. Please take care of yourselves out there, and we will see you next week.